Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Remembrance Day at the Military Museums. Thank you for being with us today. My name is David Peabody, and I am the manager of the Military Museums, and I will be your master of ceremonies today. Before we begin, a few quick housekeeping items. We ask that you please mute your cell phones. If you need first aid, there are first aiders on standby to the right of the stage in front of the tan tank. Then please refrain from smoking during the ceremony. We have a number of special guests with us today, and I would like to acknowledge the following. The Honorable Lois E. Mitchell, the 18th Lieutenant Governor of Alberta and President of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. Representing the Royal Canadian Navy, Captain Navy Janet McDougall. Representing 41 Canadian Brigade Group, Deputy Commander Lieutenant Colonel Nick Seeley Thompson. Representing the Royal Canadian Air Force, Lieutenant Colonel John Alec Bussens, Lieutenant Colonel retired Gord Todd, and Major retired John Argue. Representing Veterans Affairs Canada, Lindy McQuillan. Representing the Consul General of the United States, Vice Consul Lisa Hudson and Sergeant Chong Studi. Representing the Consul General of the United Kingdom, Jonathan Turner. Representing the Consul General of the Netherlands, Catriona Lemay Don, Consul Emeritus. Representing the Consul General of France, Gerard Carlier. Representing the Consul General of Japan, Takahiko Watabe and Tomohiro Nakagaki. And representing the Consul General of the Netherlands, Sue Mild. Also with us, representing the University of Calgary, the President, Dr. Edward McCauley, and Vice Provost, Libraries and Cultural Resources, Dr. Mary Jo Romaniuk. Representing Mount Royal University, Provost and Vice President, Dr. Chad London. Representing our first responders, Superintendent Joe Brar and Inspector Keith Hurley of Calgary Police Service. Emergency Management Coordinator Patrick McCabe of Calgary Fire Department. And Stuart Bridle, the Operations Manager of Alberta Health Services and EMS. Representing the Military Family Resource Center, Barbara Paul. And representing the Canada Lands Company, Mary Thamaris. We have also with us today members of the Sikh Society of Calgary and Dashmesh Cultural Center, members of Calgary Black Chambers, and members of the National Association of Japanese Canadians and the Calgary Japanese Community Association, members of the Hungarian Veterans Association, and members of the Honorable Guard of the Military Museums Foundation. Would you please rise for the arrival of our VIPs? Please be seated. With us today, representing the Government of Canada, we have the Member of Parliament for Calgary Centre, Greg McLean. Representing the Province of Alberta, the Honourable Rebecca Schultz, Minister of Environment and Protected Areas. Representing the City of Calgary, Mayor Jody Gondek. And representing 3rd Canadian Division Support Group, Colonel Robin Dove and Chief Warrant Officer Mark Trollet. I now ask that you please stand for the singing of O Canada by the Sabriti Singers, directed by Anne Gray. Please be seated. To open our ceremony, I now invite our chaplain, Reverend Carolyn Harold, to provide the invocation.
Good morning. Thank you for choosing to come out on this chilly morning. We who have gathered here are from many backgrounds, faiths, and histories. Yet we are united in remembering the sacrifice of the over 118,000 men and women who sacrificed their lives in the service of their country, our country. In this act of remembering, we bring back into the present, those who died in the storm of war and are no longer with us. In a moment, I will ask you to bow your head to honor them, to acknowledge our debt to them, and to seek the energy and resolve to create the world they dreamed of, a world of justice, united in peace. Please join me in prayer, or simply take this moment to join your heart and mind together with all of us here in gratitude. God of all humanity, on this day of remembrance, we give thanks for those who served on the front lines, for those who fought on land, sea, and in the air, for those who provided medical care in the midst of war, for all those who could not stand by and wait. We give thanks for those who believed that the world could be a better place. We remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, trusting that others could and would carry the torch. Greater source of all hope, we give thanks that those who died in the service of the peoples of the world are now at peace. May that same peace calm our fears, bring justice to all peoples, and establish harmony among the nations. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Harold. Mr. McLean, Minister Schultz, Mayor Gonda, Colonel Dove, Chief Warrant Officer Drolet, our foreign dignitaries, distinguished guests, and all of you here today and watching us live. I am honored to be here with everyone in attendance as we observe this most solemn occasion. With conflicts raging in other parts of the world, more than ever, we need to remember the cost we as a nation paid to maintain peace, deter aggression, and defeat tyranny. And to think about what the cost would be of not making that sacrifice. We are fortunate to have with us today a veteran of the Second World War, Mr. Bryce Chase, who well understood the price Canada paid in the Second World War. We should also not forget the many thousands of animals who have served and died at war, from horses who served roles in transportation and in the cavalry, dogs who provided comfort as mascots and filled many other roles, and many other animals that have served our country in war. Every year, we use the poem In Flanders Fields to symbolize our remembrance. Written amidst the devastation of the First World War, the message of this poem endures. We will not forget, and we will carry on. Now, to read this poem for us today, from the Military Museums, Logan DeHoon. Logan?
Thank you, Dave. Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow. Between the crosses, row on row, they mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, To you, from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith, thus who die, we shall not sleep. The poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Thank you, Logan, and well done. We also remember through music and song, which so powerfully captures emotions that are hard to put into words. The Sabriti singers will now perform the poem For the Fallen by Lawrence Binion, written 109 years ago, in September 1914, with music composed by Mike Sams in 1992. Thank you, Anne, and to all the singers. That was amazing. We'll now proceed with the remarks from our VIPs. First to speak, representing 3rd Canadian Division Support Group, Colonel Robin Dove. Sir.
Good morning. To the families of the fallen, Mr. McLean, Mr. Schultz, Mayor Gondek, Honorable Lois Mitchell, members of the Canadian Armed Forces past and present, community leaders, Mr. Dave Peabody and the team at the Military Museums, international friends, thank you for joining us to remember the incredible bravery and strengths of those who came before us. Nous sommes ici pour commémorer des individus qui se sont battus et qui ont été touchés par la guerre. Because behind every battle, every military anniversary, and every uniform are individual Canadians who have embraced the values of service, courage, and sacrifice to keep us safe. Ces valeurs soulignent l'historique et fierté des Forces armées canadiennes. 2023 marks the 75th anniversary since the start of United Nations peacekeeping. More than 125,000 Canadians served in UN peace operations, and over 130 Canadians have died during these operations. Peacekeepers risk their lives daily to promote stability and enable security in the most fragile areas of the world. This was the case at the Battle of Medak Pocket in Croatia 30 years ago. Canadian troops of 2nd Battalion, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, wearing the UN blue helmet, endured heavy artillery and machine gun fire, repelling numerous attempts to dislodge them. They prevailed, taking casualties in the cause of peace, while fighting the toughest action to that point since the Korean War. 2023 is significant also as the 70th anniversary since the signing of the Armistice, ending 3 years of hostilities in Korea. Notable battles such as Kapyong and Hill 355 are still familiar to many, thanks to Korean War veterans and their family members among us today. They provide testament to the sacrifices of ordinary Canadians in extraordinary circumstances, on the land, in the air, and in the sea, during the third deadliest conflict in Canadian history. C'est pour cela qu'on se réunisse les 11 novembre, qu'on partage ces histoires. We share stories of our Canadian Armed Forces members at their bravest and their best, so that they are not lost to history, so that future generations can feel inspired by all that they achieved. We are proud to wear our uniforms, to represent Canada, and carry on a proud legacy that dates from before Confederation. I have experienced armed conflict and its aftermath in Bosnia, Afghanistan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. I've known both the civilians and the soldiers whose lives were impacted, including some who paid the ultimate price, and others who bear the invisible scars to this day. It's therefore my duty and privilege to enable you to feel connected to them. Whether or not you serve or have a relative who has served, it's important that you keep their spirit of service alive. Recognize those who made it home, those who came home changed, and remember those who did not come home at all. Lest we forget, nous nous souviendrons de eux. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Duff. And now, on behalf of the City of Calgary, I would like to ask Mayor Jody Gondek to provide her remarks.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today at the Military Museums on Treaty 7 territory, where we give thanks to the Indigenous peoples who stewarded these lands for so many generations. I'm humbled to be here today to honor the sacrifices of those who lost their lives, those who returned home after valiant efforts to keep our freedoms intact, as well as those who continue to serve and keep the values of peace and community alive. On behalf of my Calgary City Council colleagues, I offer my gratitude not only for your service, but also for the role that your families have played in supporting you through your commitment to our nation. Lest we forget, it's a phrase that we utter during services like this. We will remember them. Words we say in ceremony as we honor those that we have lost. I've often questioned whether we sincerely appreciate the weight of those words and phrases. And I have asked, do we understand the burden of responsibility that was carried for us, the burden of protecting our nation, our lives, our freedoms, and our democracy? Do we fully appreciate those who remain unknown to us, to whom we were equally unknown, those who fought and died or came back as a shell of their former selves? Can we ever fully honor and acknowledge them? Are we at a place when we can respect that there are people who are assembled here today and people we have lost in battle who entered war zones knowing that that might be their last moment? And they did not let that deter them from the task at hand, to ensure that we were all protected from those who wished harm upon us, those who wished to change or end our lives in the name of some ideology. This day is one that we should hold sacred in our hearts and our minds. It's a day where we must stop our daily routines and our daily worries and focus solely upon how incredibly fortunate we are to live in a country and a city where we can exist peacefully with each other. It's a day to seek out those who served and hear their stories, because their stories matter. When we make these human connections, we become more compassionate and understanding. It is these connections that will teach us the bonds holding us together will forever be stronger than divisions that are created by fear and hatred. So please seek out those stories and listen carefully. I have stories that I hold in my heart, On this day, I am grateful to have met and spent time with David Hines, my brother-in-law, who served with the Canadian Forces in the Royal Canadian Artillery and Fire Services, who put his life on the line in active military service and again as a firefighter. He was taken from us too soon due to work-related cancer. It is also the story of Major Gurdar Singh Brad, my grandfather, who offered compassion and support to the many displaced people who were forced to relocate during the partition of India many decades ago. Stories like this impact my understanding of remembrance and my commitment to carrying forth with the mission of creating a better world. I will leave you with some words that I find haunting and beautiful, and these are words that signify remembrance to me. It's from a longer piece called The Gunner Stream, and it serves as a reminder of our role in collective, ongoing missions for a peaceful coexistence. Floating down through the clouds, memories come rushing up to me now. But in the space between the heavens and the corner of some foreign field, I had a dream. A place to stay, enough to eat, somewhere old heroes shuffle safely down the street, where you can speak out loud about your doubts and fears, and what's more, no one ever disappears. You never hear their standard issue kicking in your door. You can relax on both sides of the tracks, and maniacs don't blow holes in bandsmen by remote control. And everyone has recourse to the law, and no one kills the children anymore. In the corner of some foreign field, the gunner sleeps tonight. We cannot just write off his final scene. Take heed of the dream. To all of our veterans, our active service members, and your families, my sincere gratitude for your service and all of your sacrifices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Gondek. And that poem, those words at the end, certainly hold meaning to those who have been overseas to places where they've seen these things. I would now like to ask the Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, the Honourable Rebecca Schultz, to come to provide us with a few words.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Premier Danielle Smith, I'm honored to join Mayor Jody Gondek, Member of Parliament Greg McLean, and all of you on this Remembrance Day morning. I am especially honored to welcome the veterans with us, as well as the men and women who are currently serving our country. We owe so much to those who have served this great country and those who continue to serve. Since the First World War, more than 1 million Canadians have served in a military war or conflict. This includes tens of thousands of Albertans. In the Second World War alone, more than 82,000 Albertans answered the call for our country, and thousands more have stepped up since then. We owe them our sincere gratitude. We owe them our respect, and we owe them our freedom. To the thousands of men and women who have sacrificed their lives in our defense, we do not forget. To the soldiers, first responders, nurses, and doctors who have proudly served and come back home, we do not forget, and we will never forget. To the Indigenous veterans who have a proud and enduring legacy of service in the armed forces and peacekeeping operations, who served our nation with great pride and courage and helped deliver the freedom we all enjoy today, we do not forget. Today is a day for us to renew our vow to remember their courage, their actions, their stories, and their sacrifices. We think about their families and the losses that they've endured, some of whom are with us today. And we think about the current soldiers, those enlisted in the military as peacemakers, as reservists, and as people who know that they could be called upon to enter a conflict at any time. Those who are willing to make the same sacrifice as those who came before them. On this day, in this month, at this hour, we stand together in silence, in remembrance and in gratitude. While we can never repay their courage and sacrifice, we must never forget that our freedom was never free. We honor the sacrifices that have allowed us the privilege of living in this amazing place that is and must forever remain strong and free. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Schultz. Very well spoken. And our final speaker for today, I would like to welcome the representative for Calgary Centre, Member of Parliament, Mr. Greg McLean.
Mayor Gondek, Minister Schultz, Honorable Lois Mitchell, and all other honored guests that are here today. Thank you for gathering here today. Thank you to Dave Peabody and everyone on your team, Dave, at the Military Museums for organizing this annual event that brings us all together in tribute to the great Canadians who served us and have served us so well. In 1918, on the 11th month, the 11th day, 11th hour, science overcame the battlefield, signaling the end of what was optimistically called the war to end all wars. Optimism indeed. 2 years ago, I lamented the tragedy of Afghanistan, and the memory of Canada's brave and fallen was raw, with the fall of the country to the Taliban. And those that helped us to try and help them suffered greatly. Last year, we spoke with brave Canadian servicemen who left of their own accord to serve with the people of Ukraine, defending itself from an invading army. This year, the Middle East is once again the conflagration. 3 years, 3 conflicts, and one has Canada's, and each one has Canada's stamp on it in one way, as our servicemen took up our country's call to bring peace and resolution to conflict, or took their own initiative to uphold our country's values. Values of freedom and democracy, with people who treasure these values. A war to end all wars ended 105 years ago, but war has not ended. God bless our Canadian servicemen and women who stand between us and these conflicts. And last night, I drove past Calgary's Field of Crosses on Memorial Drive. It was awe-inspiring as the candles lit the crosses in the night. And as a reminder of the price we have paid, row on row of crosses representing more than 3,500 servicemen and women from southern Alberta who paid the ultimate price in serving their country, in serving us. The 8th Prime Minister of Canada, Sir Robert Borden's famous quote is, "Let us never forget the solemn truth that the nation is not constituted of the living alone." Our Canadian values, our way of life, and the pride that we all have as Canadians is because of the men and women who have fought for our country. The act of remembrance should be acknowledged all year, but it is important that we take the time today to remember. We owe so much to these Canadians who served, and some fell for our sake. Thank you to all the men and women who serve in our forces and their families. Thank you for your service and dedication to our country, lest we forget.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Always well spoken. We are going to remember once again through song. But as we move into the formal portion of our ceremony, I will call on the Vigil party to fall in around our cenotaph. As they are falling in, the Sabriti singers will once again perform, this time singing the song, Daddy Boy. This song was a popular song among soldiers in the First World War, and it has many interpretations. In one popular interpretation, it has come to symbolize a parent seeing their child go off to war. And
oh, Daddy boy, the pipes are calling from
proceed with the formal act of remembrance. We will begin with the last post, our salute to those who are taking the final rest. That will be followed by 2 minutes of silence, a time to reflect personally on the sacrifices Canadians have made. The 2 minutes of silence will be concluded by the playing of the lament on the bagpipes. This haunting tune symbolizes the cries of love of family members mourning those they've lost. Following the lament, we will hear the rouse, often known as the reveille. This is a call to those who have fallen to take their final resting place above their mortal duties, and a reminder to us all that we must carry on. gentlemen, please remain standing as we take our oath of remembrance. To read the act of remembrance this year, I invite Miss Erin May from the Military Museums Foundation. Erin?
For the fallen, they shall not grow old as we that are left to grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
Please be seated. Before we proceed with the formal wreath laying portion of our ceremony, I would like to invite Dr. Jeffrey Jackson to the podium to tell us about some lesser known battles that led up to the famous Battle of Ortona, fought on the eastern coast of Italy 80 years ago. Two regiments represented in this museum, the PPCLI and the Calgary tanks, now the KOCR, fought at the battles of the Gully and the Morrow River. Here to speak more about that, Dr. Jackson.
Years ago, the Canadian 1st Division was fighting its way fiercely up Italy. In the winter of 1943, the Allies pushed the enemy north of its defensive line, spanning from Naples to Ortona, from the Tyrrhenian Sea to the Adriatic. The enemy at this time was dug in along the Morrow River. On December 4th, 1943, the Allies, Canadians, British, Indian, and New Zealand troops attacked. Highway 16, the main route along the coast, exposed to aimed enemy fire is where the commander of the 1st Canadian Division, Major General Chris Folks, opted to try and cross the Morrow at 3 different points on a 4-mile front. Between the Morrow and Ortona, there are 4 500-foot-high east-west ridges that intersect the approaches. The region was studded with hamlets, farms, olive groves, and wire-glazed vineyards, interspersed with farm roads and blind switches. A difficult place for advance in the teeth of a skilled, determined, and prepared enemy. As the attack commenced, one Princess Patricia, a Canadian light infantry soldier, commented, "The river valley vanished in the fire, shot puffs, and plumes of thousands of shell explosions." 2 days of fighting brought the Canadians to what appeared on a topographical map as nothing but a narrow minor gap about a kilometer south of Ortona. But as the leading troops approached, they discovered the line was actually a deep, narrow gully. The enemy had dug deep holes into its southern banks that protected them from artillery fire. When the shelling stopped, the enemy dashed up to the gully's edge to fire their machine guns on the Canadian infantry, advancing up a gradual slope through tangled vineyards and olive groves. The gully, as the Canadian dubbed it, proved impossible to break with direct attacks. Each attack by a single battalion was thrown back with heavy casualties. Drenching rain and falling temperatures added to the misery. The battleground mirrored the muddy no-man's land between opposing sides of the previous World War. San Leonardo Valley, a village in the area, and a staging ground for enemy reinforcements, was still in enemy hands. And despite the best efforts of the Air Force, which tried to limit the steady stream of enemy traffic on the roads to the battle area, were steadily reinforcing their positions. Folks ordered the 2nd Brigade to capture San Leonardo, with the Seaforth and Calgary tanks leading the way. This advance could only take place if the 3rd Field Company, Royal Canadian Engineers, could bridge the Morrow, repair the road. The Royal Canadian Engineers report on the Morrow River diversion notes that a new bridge site was constructed with corduroy roads on both sides of the river. The enemy was forced to concede San Leonardo when a squadron of Calgary tanks, commanded by Major E.A.C. Amy and a company of Seaforth Highlanders, commanded by Captain A.W. Mercer, as the Calgary Tanks Wardice said, fought a fierce and bitter engagement, where both infantry taken and fought like lions. Lieutenant J.F. McLean and his platoon battled their way up the hill, silencing an anti-tank gun, 10 enemy machine gun posts, killing at least 8 of the enemy and capturing 18. The Calgarys established a foothold in the village and placed their tanks to protect against counterattacks. Cooperation between the tanks and infantry had been outstanding throughout the day, and after one Calgary Sherman knocked out a German tank at a range of 40 yards, a soldier ran up to the Sherman, patted on the side, and said, "You big cast iron son of a, I could kiss you." By nightfall, the battle group reported that San Leonardo was more or less firmly in our hands. The Canadian forces would continue to fight until the 18th of December, when the Moray River and Gully Battle were over. However, the fighting was not. The Canadians would continue into Ortona in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jackson. Very, very interesting stories. There are so many battles, we know the famous ones, but we must not forget all those that were fought throughout the campaigns Canada has participated in. We are now going to proceed with the wreath laying portion of our ceremony. For our guests, you can move to the back of the seating area and prepare to get your wreath. Representing the Government of Canada, Mr. Greg McLean. Representing the Province of Alberta, Minister Rebecca Schultz. Representing the City of Calgary, Mayor Jody Gondek. Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, the Honorable Lois Mitchell. Representing the Royal Canadian Navy, Captain Janet McDougall. Representing the Canadian Army, Colonel Robin Dove and Chief Warrant Officer Mark Drolley. Representing the Royal Canadian Air Force, Lieutenant Colonel John Bosons, Lieutenant Colonel retired Gord Todd, and Major retired John Arkin. Representing Veterans Affairs Canada is Lindy McQuillan. Representing the 3rd Canadian Division Support Group, Lieutenant Colonel Robin Dove, and Chief Warrant Officer Mark Trolley, and representing 41 Canadian Brigade Group, Lieutenant Colonel Nick Seeley Thompson, and representing the 41 Service Battalion, 2nd Lieutenant Pranitsky. Representing our Memorial Cross families, Mrs. Helen Keller, mother of Corporal Bryce Keller, and in memoriam of Corporal Cole Barsh, PPCLI, KIA 4th July 2007, the family of Cole Barsh. Representing the consulates of the United Kingdom, the United States, Japan, Norway, and the Netherlands, Consul General of the United Kingdom, Mr. Jonathan Turner, Vice Consul of the United States, Ms. Lisa Hudson and Sergeant Chong Studi, Consul General of Japan, Mr. Takahiko Wadabe, Consul General of Norway, Ms. Sue Mile, Consul General Emeritus of the Netherlands, Ms. Catriona LeMay-Dillon. Representing Calgary Police Service, Superintendent Joe Brar, the Calgary Fire Department, Emergency Management Coordinator Patrick McCabe, and EMS and AHS Operations Manager Stuart Bridle. Representing the University of Calgary, Dr. Edward McCauley, President of the University, and Dr. Mary Jo Romania, Vice President or Vice Provost of Libraries and Cultural Resources. Representing Mount Royal University, Dr. Chad London, Provost and Vice President Academic. Representing the Calgary Military Family Resource Center, Barbara Pohl, and Canadian Forces Liaison Council, Lieutenant Commander Retired Ed Straub. Representing the Military Museums Foundation, Mr. Jim Landon, and the Canada Lands Company, Director Mary Tamaris. Representing the Hungarian Veterans Association, Rob Burke, President of the Hungarian Veterans Association Calgary Chapter, and representing the Calgary Japanese Community Association, Maureen Coleman, President, and representing the National Association of Japanese Canadians, Mr. Kevin Okabe, Executive Director of the National Association. Representing Indian Veterans, Colonel Ratan Parmar. Finally, representing the Sikh Society of Calgary, Mr. Balahar Singh Dillon, President of the Sikh Society of Calgary, and Dashnash Cultural Center, Mr. Baljinder Singh Gill, President of the Dashnash Culture Center. We will now continue with our service. We invite any other groups or individuals who wish to lay a wreath to proceed to the eternal flame in front of the museum main entrance at the conclusion of this portion of the service. Reverend Harold will proceed to the flame following our formal ceremony to assist with this part of the service. We now call upon Reverend Harold for the benediction.
Please join me in prayer, or simply take a moment to turn your heart towards those gathered here. Holy One, we ask for your blessing upon the men and women who gave their lives in defense of our nation, our freedom, and our children's freedom. May our remembrance of those who stepped forward inspire us to build and establish friendship and peace between all nations. As we depart this ceremony, we ask you to bless us with strength to rise to the challenges of our time. Fill us with hope and the resolve to carry on the legacy of those who died so we might live without the nightmare of war. May we live our lives in your peace, a peace that is strong, unwavering, and shall enfold the earth. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Harold. Everyone, please stand and join us in the singing of God Save the King, performed by the Safridi Singers. Everyone, please remain standing for the departure of our VIPs. As the ceremony concludes, and I look out upon all of you gathered here today, I can't tell you how immensely proud I am to host this ceremony. It's really meaningful and moving for me that so many Calgarians, so many Canadians would come out to recognize those who have served and those who continue to serve. I would like to thank everyone for coming here today, and I would like to thank everyone involved in today's service. 41 Service Battalion for providing our guard, and the British Army Training Unit Suffield, the Reverend Carolyn Harold and Dr. Jeff Jackson for their words, our piper, Captain Don Sun from the Pipes and Drums of the Calgary Highlanders, our bugler, Michael Rowan, and a round of applause, please, for the Safridi Singers, directed by Miss Anne Gray, for their excellent musical contributions. I would like to thank Colossa Vision for providing our sound and stage today. And finally, the staff and the volunteers of the Military Museums and the Military Museums Foundation, without which this ceremony would not be possible. This concludes our Remembrance Day ceremony. The doors to the museum will open at noon, and admission is by donation. I look forward to seeing everyone there. Have a great rest of your day.